Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is the Chronicles of Apple from the apple of my eye, and today I'm going to go and I'm going to talk about sky is the limit. And this is in particular is about the volt. So the volt, every time you hear the word volt, it actually pertains to a dome-shaped figure that is solid, okay? You can think about a bank vault, okay, which is made of metal or something really, really thick, okay? So if you were, let's say, to have read the Bible, but you don't know anything about science, you just know how to read and nothing else, okay? This is the kind of configuration that you might envision in your mind, okay? So I'm going to read a little bit from the book of Genesis. And first of all, I need to pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I ask, Lord, that you guide me in this particular topic. I know, Lord, that there are many people that can do more teaching in depth about this particular subject. And I pray, Lord, that more people would be able to open up their minds and hearts and spirit upon this particular topic, because this belongs to your kingdom. So Lord, I ask for your hand in this discussion, and Lord, lead me to speak what you wanted me to speak of in a way that makes sense to people. So I pray all this in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. So I am not a priest for obvious reasons. So I want you to actually go to your pastors or priests or rabbis, whatever you wanted to do in regards to this topic. But I wanted to post it because we are so inundated by everything else besides the Bible. So in the book of Genesis, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Okay, so there's an order, heaven and earth. Okay, you will always see that two things being mentioned. Now the earth was unformed and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the waters. So it looks like heaven and earth was created, but then all of a sudden it's void. So did something happen there? And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. So again, light, darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and there was evening and there was morning, one day. So he even said one day, okay, one day, not many days in a year, or not 1 year, not 10,000 years and billion years. One day. That's all it took him. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and there was evening and there was morning, a second day. Okay, so we got the second day now. And God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear." So at this point, he created the land. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of waters called the seas. And God saw that it was good. He was very happy. And God said, "Let the earth put forth grass, herb yielding seeds, and fruit tree bearing fruit as its kind, wherein the seed thereof upon the earth." And it was so. So this will keep going on. Okay, and then let me just continue reading. "And the earth brought forth grass, herb yielding seeds after its kind, and tree bearing fruits." So everything is after its kind. So you will see the order. "And let there be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. Now, if you happen to be in seminary and sees this, I'm not trying to teach this. I'm reading to you exactly what it says in here. And I'm asking for more people to please help me with this particular topic. And this is why I'm doing this. Okay, so this actually I took, if you can see that, there is a Hebrew translation on the other side. Obviously, I don't read Hebrew. So for those of you who read Hebrew and your scholars, go ahead, explain this part. So there's a word called rakia, and interestingly, the word rakia sounds like it's got the word rock in it. So it's kind of an irony that in English there is a rock. So I'm gonna get back with you on rock and rocket, okay? So uh, moving on. Hi, so continuing on are the words sunrise and sunsets. Now, we're all familiar with sunrise and sunset, and one of the biggest discrepancy that we're seeing, our eyes potentially can, if you were to take the plane on a good day and a clear day, be able to see about 200 miles. That's a lot of miles, okay? But unfortunately, what you tend to see is a horizon, and sometimes you can kind of see it lifted up to the ends. So it's not giving us the concept of this thing where the earth curves, okay? I did this video because there are a lot of people that are actually starting to believe back into this geocentric model. And there's a big backlash within the scientific, I don't even know if they're really the scientific community or just whoever is paid to continue with the propaganda. And, you know, I will make it clear later on in this particular videos. So if you were to look here, you will see that this is a very, very defined sort of a quarter in the sky, you know, depending on where you're at. And this is, you can see it growing strong and stuff, and this is when it's going down. Now, it appears that the clouds can kind of cover it. You know, you'll see the clouds kind of forming and stuff like that. But as you can tell, this kind of a definition almost looks like a flashlight. Now, if you look to the right, I don't know if you can see this. I hope you're seeing my pointer. Are you able to see my pointer? This is the Earth, and then all of these are revolving. Now, interestingly, take a look at this thing here. If in this diagram, the moon is sort of like cycling around with the Venus. Now, if let's say you were to have the Venus, if they were sort of the same size or close to the same size, that could potentially, if you flip the moon and the Venus, it could potentially be causing an eclipse based on this model. If you were to, well, this one, you will see that the Venus will be behind the moon, and the moon is a lesser, is the lesser light. So if you've got the Venus behind the moon, won't it cause the phases of the moon? Now the Earth here, this would not be the original, like I would say the geocentric model would not have looked like this. The reason being is that everything to them was flat, okay? And then you've got the dome. So if you were to flip this upside down, that would appear more as the Earth. So now here, this one likes the whole spherical thing, but they're showing the Venus there and then the sun. So if, let's say, the sun went behind the moon, then you've got the eclipse of the sun. Now the Mars is there. So I'm not sure what the Mars could be doing. Now, interestingly, there's a lot of people that believe that we have been able to make it to the Mars. And from this model, it could appear that Mars could have something going on because, you know, depending on where you put it in the distance. So again, this is, you know, like this is a model of the universe, okay? And because of whether it's by observation or you can see the constellations here. Constellations are fairly fixed that they use it to actually watch the sky and get direction. So if you remember, with Jesus Christ being born, there is, I don't know if it's a northern star, but anyway, the wise kings, okay, whoever, you know, whether you think it's a 3 kings or more than 3 kings, a lot of kings, that came to see Jesus Christ, they were following the star in the sky. Therefore, and they were following it for days. Therefore, it had to be fixed. Okay? If not, you're not going to follow that. There are stories of slaves in America. They would follow the stars in order to get out. Okay? So they wanted to be free slaves, and they would do singing, and they followed the stars. Okay? Whether it's the Big Dipper or whatever they wanted to follow to get out, because that's all they have. So I just wanted to show you that sunset and sunrise are repeated in the Bible multiple times. And if I were to write down how many times are sunset and sunrise mentioned in the Bible, it's quite a bit. At least 30 sunset. So I would say, when you see the sunset or the panoramic view of God's finest expressed in nature, the roaring, who stills the roaring of the seas, the roaring of their waves, and the turmoil of the nations? They who dwell at the ends of the earth stand in awe of your signs. You make the sunrise and sunset shout for joy. Okay, why would the Lord say sunset and sunrise here, if what he really means is the earth peeking through, like rising its face upon the sun? I think there are ways that God would have described it. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul will make its boast in the Lord. The humble will hear it and rejoice. Exalt the Lord with me, and let's exalt his name together. So here, I'm just pointing out to you that the sunset and sunrise is mentioned in the Bible. Okay? So from dawn until sunset, the name of the Lord deserves to be praised. Okay? I think that's Psalms 113:3. And I want you to take a look at the Hebrew translation, the parallel. It will be Mimisra, Semes, Ad Mebawao, Mebauba, Mebowa, Mebobab. It sounds like bow. See, like right here? This one looks like bow. And there you will see the word bow. I'm not probably pronouncing right, but the word is bow. Mimisra is to rise. Semes is the sun. Ad is to, it's going down. Mehulal, Sem, the name. Is it Shem? Shem, Yahweh. Okay, so that is the translation. It's quite interesting. It literally tells you that the sun bows down to praise God. That is amazing. Beautiful. Now let's take a look at domes. Okay, one of the most favorite dome shapes that we see is the rainbow. Now they claimed that the rainbow is the effect of the dome above the earth, causing some reflection that looks beautiful like this. And if you remember, during the time of Noah, when they finally settled down with the flood, there were rainbows, and there were only 8 people that actually lived at that point. A lot of the giants and the Nephilims and all the dinosaurs, a lot of them have died at that point. They probably only took, whatever the Lord prescribed to them, and he got a lot of pairs of animals. So Another thing I wanted to point out is how many churches shows these domes. Okay, now exactly why, I don't know if it's because of Genesis 1. You know, are they depicting, because back then there's only a handful. This might be Holy Sepulchre. This might be Israel. So anyway, over to the left here, you will see that there is an influence, perhaps of the Genesis 1, when it comes down to creating the church domes. Okay, now when they say the cornerstone, it's that piece of stone, the last stone that makes it fit so that it holds the archway. Okay, it's very significant. And even Jesus Christ calls himself the cornerstone. Now, interestingly, Jesus is also represented by the ladder and the Jacob's ladder, but that's besides the point. Now, again, I'm just letting you know certain things that I have learned, and I want to incorporate it with this particular dome over the earth, or the vault, or the firmament. Now, over to the bottom left here, you will see these archways. Every time you see this at the catacomb, this is a significance that somebody that was interned in here is a saint. Okay, they are given a dome. That's just a tidbit that I got from Italy. So I'm pretty sure that might be, I don't know if it's Holy Sepulchre. So anyhow, we will move on. Now, if you were to look at this clock, tick-tock, okay, tick-tock, tick-tock, okay, that's really more, you know, we have it in our watch, right? And this is supposed to signify, now it's all becoming digital. So they're phasing out the actual, you know, analog. And the way to think about Jesus Christ when it comes down to the analog is that it's got the word log in it. Log, and is a plus sign, and a log is wood. So that's like a crucifixion. Okay, Jesus Christ came on the earth as a man, and he left as a man, and he was resurrected, and he is always God, and he is always man. Okay, 100%, 100% man, 100% God. So there is, of course, the firmament, so you can kind of, the earth was more designed in this fashion back in the days. By the time people got to do some circumnavigating, this is the kind of map you would see more. They don't think that they're going to be like upside down at a certain point. They didn't see ships past 10 kilometers, but you know, that's when they start climbing up to the ladder and check out what's on the other side to look further if they have a telescope. Further down the line, one of the biggest argument that people have is that if in every mile there is already a 0.152 miles added, you know, because a nautical mile is bigger than a regular mile, they're saying that why is this nautical mile is not being used by engineers when it comes down to paving our roads and our bridges, and even like when they make tunnels, okay? And engineers don't use it because they're going to have a lot of miscalculation and problems on the road if they were to use a nautical mile. But it looks like they should be using it. So anyhow, and God said, let there be the lights of the firmament in the heaven to divide the day from the night. Okay, so I went over that already. Now, I want you to see that the sundial, when you think of a sundial, it sounds like the sun is dialing around the earth. Okay, so if the earth is in the center, the sun is dialing. Okay, and there's an example of a sundial, and it's based on the shadow. Okay, from that little thing there. Now you can see this one, they're showing the constellation on the surface of the dome. Now, the dome has different layers, and that would be the connection to the different planets or the different lights. Okay, so let's move on. And again, I just want, okay, I just want people to actually chime in and open your mind to what a geocentric model looks like, and does it make sense to you? Okay, so looking at this skull, and I brought this up because when you say volt, I think about the cranial vault. Okay, we had to look at this when I was in school, and some of you may have seen this, and you can see that there is the left and the right side of the brain, and there's different parts to it, and it has different caverns, and there's a center part. So there's a left, so you can call this west, and this one to the right, you can call it east. Okay, so I'm just saying this because I want you to take a look. There's a falx cerebri, okay, and it does this. It is kind of like a raw all over. This is a pretty, it looked like plastic, pretty stiff, you know. I remember touching these portions when I was in the cadaver labs. And I just find it fascinating. I brought this up. Now, of course, the earth is not your skull, but I want you to think. This thing here is a buttery substance. It's soft and smooth, okay? It's not like a stiff thing. Your brain is very kind of cute and mushy. I love looking at the brain. The one that's already, you know, not the live one, of course, you know, it will be a little bit kind of like leathery, but that's the chemical stuff. But they said during the operation it will be kind of like soft, okay? And it's very cute, the brain. Now you can see that if you were to picture, I want to give an analogy of the skull and the way the earth is made by God. It's got the left and right. We have east and west as well. And there's a cavern protecting, because obviously the earth needs to be protected. So God put the dome. Now, I didn't say that there is a dome. I'm telling you that according to the Bible, God put the firmament over, and it's hard. In fact, in the book of Job, it says it's like molten glass. It's a solid molten glass. When you think of rakia, it's actually something that would require a hammer, okay? It is that hard. So the skull is hard, and it's meant to protect the soft brain that is encased inside, and it sits upon, and there's like different fluids in there. There's a cerebrospinal fluid, okay? And there's fluids that can go through, and this is the bone, but there's portions there where the cerebrospinal fluid can go around. So your brain is not kind of stuck in the skull. It's actually separated. And there's the meninges, which is another like layer of protection. And I'm bringing this up because I find it fascinating that the earth may have something very, very similar. Because if it's a closed system, it's like a thermos. It goes in and out, you know, and there's water. Okay. So I'm not telling you that the earth looks exactly like the brain, but I'm just giving an analogy because it's quite fascinating, the different layers of protection upon the brain, and the earth also have different layers of protection. And we are going to move on. So I wanted to have people take a look at the word Van Allen belt. I'm not familiar with this, but apparently the astronomers are having a rough time with this Van Allen belt that they think is causing radioactive activity. And this is a problem for astronomers, and they're having a problem with their aircraft, I guess. And they were thinking about getting rid of it. Maybe we don't need it. Now, that's kind of an odd thing to think of, because that's like saying, okay, if you've got your skull and somebody decided, let's just get rid of the falx cerebri or whatever that is, okay, because we don't necessarily need it. That to me is kind of ridiculous. Now, why would they even think it's not necessary, other than perhaps it is a barrier for them to actually get out of, to kind of puncture the skull. So you see, look at how many layers there is. Okay, you got the dura mater, the arachnoid, the pia. In the pia is where we're going to see all the, you know, arteries of the brain. And then this part here is for the cerebrospinal fluid. It goes into the different caverns into the brain and actually goes up and down the spine. So it will go down. So the brain is sort of suspended, and your neck, if it's not because of all the muscles of the neck, you're just being held, your head is just bobbing over the spine, okay? And it's interesting, that's why they call it the atlas, okay? If you know, like before, they think somebody's got to be holding the earth, and they called it the atlas, and so that's the name of one of the cerebral bone, and the spinal bone, I mean. Okay, so we're gonna look into, so I want you to think about these layers here, and the earth also have the different, what we call atmospheres, but at the top of that is also that particular hard layer, and I am not sure if it is actually a Van Allen belt, okay? But I want people to do some research on this, okay? I'm not saying, I mean, even when I read the biblical stuff, feel free to correct and mention something, because I'm sure there are things that some of you may know that I don't know. All right, now some of the information that I wanted to read to you in regards to the Van Allen probes, and this is a very particular, they call it a belt. There's an inner belt. The inner Van Allen belt extends typically from the altitude of 0.2 to 2 Earth radii, or 1,000 kilometer to 12,000 kilometer above the Earth. And in certain cases, when solar activity is stronger, or in geographical areas such as the South Atlantic anomaly, the inner boundary may decline to roughly 200 kilometers, so that's pretty low, above the Earth's surface. The inner belt contains high concentration of electrons in the range of hundreds keV, and the energetic protons with the energies exceeding 100 MeV. I'm not sure how to pronounce that one. Trapped by the relatively strong magnetic fields in the region. It is believed that proton energies exceeding 50 MeV in the lower belts at lower altitudes are the result of the beta decay or neuron created by cosmic ray collision with the nuclei of the upper atmosphere. The source of the lower energy proton is believed to be proton diffusion due to changes in the magnetic field during the geomagnetic storms. So this is something that we need to bring up to some of the astronomers. So there is a Van Allen probe mission aimed to understanding how populations of relativistic electrons and ions in space form a change in response to changes in solar activity in the solar wind. NASA Institute of Advanced Concepts funded studies have proposed magnetic scopes to collect antimatter that naturally occur in the Van Allen belt of Earth, although only about 10 micrograms of antiprotons are estimated to exist in the entire belt. When you say probes, that's kind of like saying you're doing a little surgery in there and you're extracting something, okay? Like if somebody decides to extract something out of your meninges, of your brain, I don't know if that's a really wise thing to do, but anyway, they do it. The Van Allen probes mission successfully launched August 30 of 2012. The primary mission was scheduled to last 2 years, with expendables expected to last 4. The probes were deactivated in 2019 after running out of fuel and are expected to deorbit during the 2030s. So they're going around the surface of the Earth, okay, at a particular distance from the ground. Now, this kind of orbiting is probably on this particular direction, because for them to be going up and down, I kind of doubt that. There's geometric storms can cause electron density to increase or decrease relatively quickly. Longer timescales processes determine the overall configuration of the belts. After electron injection increases electron density is often observed to decay exponentially. Those decay time constants are called lifetimes. Measurements for the Van Allen probe B magnetic electron ion spectrometer show long electron lifetime in the inner belt. So anyhow, there was a statement that they were trying to actually remove this particular belt. Okay, they know it exists, and there was a push to remove it because it can cause problems to the astronomers or perhaps the aircraft. And this is not something that obviously will show up on mainstream media. Okay, so obviously we didn't hear about this. I've never heard of the Van Allen probes. So we're going to move on to the next slide. Now I wanted you to look at this. It's considered a flat Earth map. According to the scientists, this is just an expanded form of the regular globe, sort of splayed out. But I don't think so. This particular kind of map is heavily used for strategic military activity. In fact, if you were to read all the verses in regards to sunset and sunrise, you are going to see a lot of military things happening, where the Lord would talk about the sunset and the sunrise, and he would talk about a place, and where the war takes place and the gathering takes place for the Israelites and their enemies and stuff like that. So that's something for you to look into. This here, the reason why it is I sort of distorted it. I wanted to kind of separate the east from the west. Okay, so at about this line here, about 10 and 10, there is a separation. I'm not sure if it's exactly 10 and 10, but wherever you find Turkey and the Aegean Sea, Aegean, and I'm going to show that later, that is the separation of the west from the east. As you can see, this is Africa, this is America, that's America, this is South America, Central America, the Far East, and so that's the reason why I kind of separated it. Okay, I turned it this way because you're not going to get it in this direction. So if, let's say, this is a brain, so I'm going to, pretend this is a brain. There is an east and west hemisphere. So this is the east. And just a cute little story for you. When they say Middle East, it's around here. Wherever is Saudi Arabia, that's the Middle East. Turkey, those are the Middle East. They call that, whatever is from Turkey, that is the Asia Minor. Then you got the Middle East, and I'm going to tell you I'll show you the maps for those. So this here is the east, and it is divided by the Aegean, Aegean Sea. All here is east, and this here is west. So I'm gonna turn it into a different color. So here, oh, this is not good, is west. Okay, that's the Middle East over here. That's the middle. Okay, and I'll make it clearer later. And so it has the east and west hemisphere. Okay, but just like what we have the top, okay, we'll call this frontal. Okay, then there's the back. Okay, there's the right and the left. Okay, the same thing with the earth, and that's why it will make sense to you when they say Far East. Far East is like Indonesia, Philippines, that's the Far East Asian. Now the Middle East, they are also Asian, okay, and Turkey is sometimes considered both east and west, okay, but in this particular thing, they are really more east because they're on the right side, So this here is 24, okay, so we got 24 hours. So the earth is like a clock. Now, I wanted to point out the very interesting thing that when they do calculation of how far the sun is from the earth, many times it's the 360 will appear. They use that in their form of calculation, but I feel as though the calculation of the distances to the earth is to fit the narrative of what they wanted to emphasize, which is a heliocentric model versus a geocentric model. Now, granted, we only have 12 people that quote unquote stepped in the moon, okay? They want, I love you to the moon and back. Like, no, they never made it there. They never made it back if they did. So these rockets that quote unquote made it to the moon, 12 of those people, only 6 of the voyages out of the 17 actually made it. And the Earth is considered to be 66,600 miles per hour running around the sun, okay? And that makes us, they made that, circumference of the orbit to be the 360, okay? But in here, the 360 is talking about the particular face of the earth, okay? Which is covered by the particular, bowl edge rim. This is considered Antarctica. So it says here Antarctica, okay? Now some would tell you, oh, that's just because it's splayed out. No, this kind of map is what is particularly used for military when it comes down to naval and air navigation. So you will not have them looking at a globe. They literally look at a flat thing on their table, okay? And anybody in the military, please let me know. Okay, so I just thought it's an interesting thing for people to understand this the east and west. Supposedly, biblically, they said that the east is favored, and and the west, I guess there's actually, it looks like it's it looks like there's just a lot more going on to the right. At one point, this is all solidified as one, and then during the flood, it's all separated. Okay, and you can still see where you could almost puzzle this here, you can almost puzzle this back up there, and it will be one solid land at one point. This particular map is really critical for the military. In fact, if you were to read this little teeny tiny information there, which I have the hardest time trying to read, it actually said that these lines that you see here are sometimes, this is like military bases, okay? That's the access point of not necessarily just commercial, but in particular military base flights, okay? So it's very, very important. Again, this is the west. Okay, from here, this would be the west. And anything at the side of, where is Turkey, Asia. Okay, so the west and then the east. Okay, so this is the far east. This is the greater, the greater. This is Asia Minor. Asia Minor, where did it go? We'll have to have I'll show you the bigger picture. Asia Minor is Turkey. Asia Major is basically China. Okay, then a little bit over here you'll find Turkey, and then the agency, that is the beginning of Asia. All right, so this that, let's erase it. Okay, now in this particular, okay, I wrote down Asian. Nation to the left is the west, and nations to the right is east. Okay, it's kind of got covered. This is the Asian. Let me get my pointer. This here is the Asian Sea. It's like Asian, but Asian. Okay, and Turkey is Asia Minor. This here is all Europe. Okay, now if you notice, Paul came from Turkey. I did a lot of stuff in Turkey, and Tarsus was part of Roman Empire at one point. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I did a little bit of reading for that before. So here you will see Iraq. This is the Middle East. Okay, this is the Middle East is part of Asia. So you can almost say that, you know, Israel, where Jesus is actually Asian, because it's Middle East. They're the middle. They're the most middle of Asia. Because over to the left over here, that would be west. So they're in the middle. So this is very critical when it comes down to end times in the book of Revelation. But I just want to point it out because I was very confused with how the heck is that the Middle East, because I'm looking at the globe and it's so confusing. Well, if I turn it this way, there's going to be west and east, and then when it's like I was so confused as a child. But the geocentric model makes sense to me. Now, some people can call it nuts, but it does. It makes more sense because it separates everything nicely. So anyhow, the way you have to understand it is just like how the brain has the ups and downs. That's how the earth is. We've got valleys and we've got mountains. Valleys, mountains, valleys, mountains. And then some places are more flat. That's just like, you know, that's how we say north and south. But actually, really what it is like the crevices. There's crevices in the earth. But where it's sitting, okay, there's a cavern. That's how the water flows back down. It goes around the land, underneath and up and back down, underneath, up and back down. And it's a closed system. Okay, so let's take a look at the difference between a bullet and a rocket. Okay, so in order to understand this, you got to realize if you are going to endorse to all the human beings, especially Americans, that you need to create a rocket, okay, in order to explore the outer space. It sounds a lot better than telling people, we wanted to create a rocket so that we can probe the skull cap of the world, you know, because we just need to nick it and knock it off, you know. Okay, so rockets are largely made of metal. They're obviously not wood, otherwise it will burn. And bullets are made of metal. So the rocket scientists decided it's a good idea to put a man in a bullet, a giant bullet. That is what a rocket is, okay? It is an air pollutant that is meant to probe and knock off. Basically, you're shooting a bullet in a skull, okay? In the skull of the earth. And later on, I'm going to show you how people around the world say the word world, okay? So you've got the rockets. What is it hitting? It's going to hit rock here when it drops down, but it's also meant to hit rock there at the skull cap. So we have a mound, a dune, okay, and mundo, okay, we have mundo, world is a mundo, dunye, okay, and what is a dunes, you know? So if you think about this, where, like, just look at the name. I mean, who is going to tell the world that we wanted to create a giant bullet to puncture the earth. Okay, if people were told that we have a skull cap, we have a firmament over the tierra, okay, the land, okay, then no one is going to allow them to do that. Not only that, we will not pay for it. We won't be paying taxes for this, okay? Then they had this crazy excuse like, well, so and so made a rocket. We want to make a rocket there too. Everybody wants to make a rocket. And they wanted to say that we are powerful. We are powerful. Even that is horrible. And it's about the bomb, okay? This is a bomb, you guys, okay? Now, in Israel, they use it to intercept, okay? Now, if you have no choice, you have to intercept it. That's what they call the Iron Dome. And they always talked about the Iron Dome. Israel is so proud of the Iron Dome. Now, they're using it appropriately because they have to stop rockets from hitting them. So the whole point of this thing is to hit Israel and to hit the skull cap. And that is just like an aneurysm, okay, or basically a shot in the head for the world, okay? So I'm trying to give you an understanding of the world is sort of created with the left and right hemisphere. It's just like a brain, okay, where the tierra, the land, is like the brain being protected by the Lord with all of us human beings in there, and the Lord covered it up. Okay, now you are going to say, anybody who's into theology, please explain. Please explain what is the purpose of these rockets, okay, in our world besides probing and basically damaging, okay, causing all kinds of conniption on planet Earth. Okay, when you see meteorites, they make it sound, oh, it's a fallen planet, whatever, fallen rocks from the sky. Those are the fallen skull cap, so to speak, most likely, because if they study it, they said, oh, well, you know, like all these rocks, and it's got some metal or whatever it has, because we have a dome, okay? All right, let's talk about Operation Dominic, and this is in regards to nuclear testing, okay? And I'm just going to read it. Operation Dominic was a series of 31 nuclear tests, totally was conducted in 1962 by the United States in the Pacific. This test series was scheduled quickly in order to respond to the counter-Soviet resumption. So you got the Soviet and the U.S. supposedly like showing off with each other. They have to have, they developed the B-52 bomber aircraft to do this kind of like nuclear activity, and it's a Cold War, the Soviet Bay of the Pigs invasion. Nikita Khrushchev announced the end of the 3-year moratorium of the nuclear testing on the 30th of August 1961. The Soviet test recommends on September 1st, initiating a series of tests that included the detonation of the Tsar Bomba. This is JFK responding by authorizing Operation Dominic. It was the largest nuclear weapons testing program ever conducted by the United States, and the last atmospheric test series conducted by the U.S. A limited test ban treaty was signed in Moscow in the following year. Supposedly, we created this in order to counter what Russia is doing. But there's a speculation that the Operation Dominic is meant to actually cause either a probing or to cause destruction on the Earth's skull cap. So there's always an excuse, okay? There's chaos and they're going to put an order to it. So they got to create Operation Dominic, okay? They got to do this nuclear test. And why would you call it Dominic? Like when you say BC is before Christ, when you say AD it's Anno Dominic. And so Jesus Christ is called, you know, our Lord. And so whenever you hear the word dom, it's a dominion, okay? It's a domain, okay? And if you notice, this kind of like to use Jesus Christ as an atomic testing, this is completely against the Bible. How are you going to encourage Americans that you are going to do nuclear testing because you wanted to destroy you wanted to break the skull of the earth, okay? You're not going to tell people that. You have to come up with different excuses. And we are dealing with a new world order, even from this time and even before this time. All the World War I and II is created in order to form the one world government. Okay, so you guys can do research on this. I'm not going to claim to be an expert on it, but there are speculations of why this was being used. It's not necessarily against Russia. It's doing something in the actual construct. It is against the book of Genesis. It's Genesis 1 in particular that they're after. If you can obliterate and make people believe that the earth is just circling around the sun and that all the phases is because of the shadow and all that stuff, and you come up with, oh, the distance of the earth is 93 million to the sun, and we gotta go 66,600. Oh, even with the distance, like the way it's calculated back and forth to the sun is 606, 606. It's just, there's just something, I don't know if it was days or hours or whatever that is. If you were to travel all the way to the sun, and why would, how could they have the age for the sun and the earth as being the same because they're quote unquote, they were birthed in the same year, the same time, but they're roughly, I mean, you don't have a sample of what is coming from the sun, so you can't possibly tell me the age of the sun. Now they said, okay, they can do this radiometric testing, and the radiometric testing is kind of silly because when they do bring in a rock that came from a magma or something like that, and take it to the lab, it tests as what, 3.5 million, and he was only 50 years old. They knew it. It was only 50 years old, but when you tested it, they said, oh, well, maybe there's a particle of it that's old. Like, this is a bunch of BS. I am so sorry. You can do your research, and if you are more knowledgeable in this thing, please make a comment. So, again, look at it. Dominic, okay? Now, the other one, okay, Operation Fishbowl. Now, Fishbowl might as well refer to the skull cap that would be closest in this region of the Antarctic, the ends. And it's, you know what, I bet it's the name is a big giveaway. Antarctic. Anti-Arctic. Arc. You've got the arc in there. The Antarctic region is the edge of the dish, okay, so to speak. And interestingly, they did a lot of these tests in Johnston Island in the Pacific Ocean over the equator. Johnston Island, and also even Christmas Island is nearby there. United States Atomic Energy Commission opposed doing any high altitude tests at location that had been used for earlier Pacific nuclear tests. His opposition was motivated by the fear that the flash from the nighttime high altitude detonating might blind civilians who were living on nearby island. Johnston Island was a remote location more distant from the populated areas than other potential test locations in order to protect the residents of the Hawaiian island and flash blindness of permanent retinal injury from the bright nuclear flash. The nuclear missiles Operation Fishbowl were launched generally towards the south of Johnston Island so that the detonation would be farther from Hawaii. Uraka was to be tests of about 1 megaton yield at a very high altitude, 1,000 kilometers. This proposed Uraka test was always controversial, especially after the damage caused to satellites by the Starfish Prime detonation. As described below, Uraka was finally cancelled, and an extensive reevaluation of Operation Fishbowl plan was made during the 82nd day operation pause after Bluegill Prime disaster, July 25, 1962. as described below. A test named Kingfish was added during the early stages of the Operation Fishbowl planning. 2 low-yield tests, Checkmate and Tightrope, were also added during the project, so that the final number of tests Operation Fishbowl was 5. Tightrope was the last atmospheric nuclear test conducted by the United States, as the Limited Test Ban Treaty came into effect shortly afterwards. So people probably had found out what they were doing. The United States completed 6 high-altitude nuclear tests. So just think about that. 6 high-altitude. You've got 6 flights to the moon that's survived. You got the 12 astronomers, but then you got the 66,600 miles per hour orbiting around the sun. They even talked about 6 minutes, Apollo 13, before they finally got back on the radio. The United States, this is why, like, the United States can have like a bad rep, because of a lot of these things, the nuclear testings. So let's move on. The Operation Fishbowl and Operation Dominic is most likely a mockery of Jesus Christ and the apostles, because if you think about Apollo 1, 2, 3, 17, whatever, this is meant to be a mockery. And then they're saying 12, look at it this way, okay, 12 astronomers made it to the moon, okay, we got 12 apostles, okay. And what are these operations? Operation Fishbowl. Okay, I'm just talking about how, like, it's like this moon landing is a huge promotion to make everybody all excited about the astral, like the astral projection, the kind of activity that they're gonna do. Okay, and we are all gonna be clapping for them and paying taxes while they send out this bullet into the sky. We were never told there's a rock in there. They're not going to tell us that, because then everybody's going to believe in the book of Genesis, and the 2 books of the Bible that the devil hates so much is the book of Genesis and the book of Revelation, because they lost their spot, okay, as angels in the book of Genesis. And then you've got pretty much, they didn't like that humans are born in this earth, and then in the end they go to hell, and they're hoping to get more and more of us with them. So keep that in mind. Now, Operation Deep Freeze is a code name for a series of United States missions in Antarctica, beginning Operation Deep Freeze in 1955 to 56, followed by Operation Deep Freeze 2, Operation Deep Freeze 3, and so on. So Admiral Richard Byrd, given the continuing, it's kind of like their leader, given the continuing and constant U.S. presence in Antarctica since that date, Operation Deep Freeze has come to be used as a general term for U.S. operations in the continent, and particular for the regular mission to resupply the U.S. Antarctic base. Task Force 199 was involved. So since the U.S. Navy already had a record of earlier explorations of Antarctica as early as 1839, Captain Charles Wilkes and the first U.S. naval expedition. I mentioned before that one of the, Ross, that's why there's the Ross Sea, is because of Ross and Clark expedition, and they clocked it as like 60,000. I don't know if it's kilometer. They said it's really wide to circumnavigate it, and they keep getting lost, like. They're on the edge, they thought that they were at the bottom, but it's like it just kept going on and on and on. It's because it's going this way. It's not just this little cap at the bottom. It's basically the whole rim for the earth, so to speak. So now take a look at these rockets, okay? Why would you call it a rocket when it's made of metal? But of course, they're not going to call it a giant bullet. Okay, if you call it a giant bullet, nobody's going to want to pay taxes for it. But calling it an astronaut, we're going to have, like we got this rocket. It's okay. It just goes into the earth. Just blows up. That's okay. We'll pick it up. In the meantime, we're gonna have you all excited with Star Wars and Star Trek. Oh, this is the way to go so that the UFO is not gonna get to us. Oh, we need it, we need it, we need it. And all the kids are watching all the cute stuff on Disney and oh, rocket ship. Yay, mommy, I wanna be an astronaut. That's basically suicide mission, okay? Think about it. You're gonna jump inside one of these is like jumping inside a bullet. And the crazy part that I don't get is they said when you get to a certain portion of this, when you get to a certain part close to the moon and everything, there's no gravity. Oh, it's a vacuum. You know, people make it look like going into a vacuum is like walking into like, an unusual weather, maybe a little cold. If you look at the Neil Armstrong and, Buzz Aldrin and stuff like that, they don't even look cold, they just, they're da 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 da, just easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Uh, if you look at what the vacuum environment does to the human body, it's treacherous. I mean, it literally could just kill people. Okay. Um, if you put anything like if you have an Android and you vacuum an aquarium, and the more you don't have the air in there anymore, no matter how much you try to turn the wheel of the that little Android thing that you have, it's not gonna fly. It's not gonna go anywhere. Now you can have a projectile, but how much force is that gonna do? Now, these rocket ships going to the moon is supposed to be able to disengage. It goes into segments. To be able to do that in a vacuum after riding it, what, 240,000 miles per hour, like impossible. You're not going to be able to just disengage that. I mean, the moment it hit the vacuum air, it will just be spinning wild and it's not going to go anywhere. You won't be able to get the right trajectory. So anyway, obviously people are going to say I'm not an astrophysicist. Well, that's the explanation some of the astrophysicists talked about, and you have to do your own research. So for fun, how do you say world in Hebrew? And I have this dish here, which is my favorite Thanksgiving dish, with sweet potato, and this is my first sweet potato. It showed up when I was looking for this. Now, in my language, ulam is a dish, okay? This looks like a dish, okay? And that is in Hebrew, olam. Olam. In Afrikaans, it's wereld. It sounds like weld. Albanian, bote in my language means a bottle, like a bottle of beer. And if you look at the book of Job, can you like him spread out the skies, hard as a cast metal mirror? Now, ESV, by the way, it's kind of a little confusing here because when people say the expanse, an expanse could very easily be related to the atmospheric, like the atmosphere. And we now have, after exosphere, magnetosphere, all that stuff. And they call it the expanse. I think in this type of translation, there is a heavy push to make it sensible and not say firmament. So the concept there was that, well, when God was talking to people, well, it's going to be hard to explain. And so instead of saying firmament, we're just going to say expanse, because maybe at that point, God has not shown them that there is no skull cap on the earth. But I don't really buy that. I think expanse is a very deceptive use for it. Rakia in Hebrew, it literally is something that you need to mold with a hammer. So, but on the ESV, when it came to the book of Job, look at this. It says spread out the skies, hard as a cast metal mirror. When you say cast iron, you're not talking about a thin, okay? pan. We're talking about something thick. And a metal mirror, so it's got part mirror and part metal, and that explains the kind of, that's why we can communicate in this earth, really good. And quote unquote, they need all the satellites. Most of the satellites are sitting, docking on the earth anyway, on this ground, more so than flying out there. So interestingly, in Russia, mir is the word for world. Dunya in Azerbaijani, now that sounds like dunes, and then Basque, it's Mundua. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Mundua, Mond, okay? Old is Mond, like El Mundo, okay? It means a mound, or Dunya, dunes, okay? When you see those like, sand dunes, it has a particular shape. So anyway, moving on. So this is the word mound in English, mundo, monde du monde. That means archaic, to enclose or fortify with a fence or a ridge of earth, to form into a mound. So mundo. So in Spanish, mundo, even in Italian, I think it's mundo or monde or whatever it is, Portuguese. The other one says dunya, and if you think about the dunes, it kind of has that figure also, but that's a little bit more vague. But the word mund in particular, it's like the world, okay? It's like a world, world, mount, mundo. So there you go. It goes with the name. It has a dome. I don't really know. The one thing I'm not clear is because the skull, you notice like it is kind of rounded, okay? Not sure if it is kind of, like you've got the flatness there, kind of like this, right? And you put the mountains in there, whatever, waters and stuff. And then we don't know what this portion is, if it's more rounded, okay? Or maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just kind of like a half circle, like this, So we really, I'm not certain how far. I mean, is it like 100 kilometers? Or it's got to be more than that, right? I mean, 100 kilometers. I mean, their rocket ship, I mean, it would hit it really quickly. Sometimes also, I don't know what the relationship of the Van Allen belt. Perhaps the Van Allen belt had something to do with how, how like it could be a filter of some sort. And I don't know if they called it a belt because it actually is pretty dense. And it could be what is buffering, maybe the sunshine, as the sun, orbits around the earth. Is it kind of like a pathway for it, so that, maybe that's why it has a particular, like, it sounds like it's a film, or I don't know if it's like a plasma. I'm not clear with it. So anyway, that's a mount. Here we are. So the sun stood still and the moon stopped until the nations avenged themselves of their enemies. Joshua 10:13. And I wanted to end you with this message from Job 9:6-7. Who shakes the earth out of its place and its pillars tremble? Who commands the sun and it does not rise? Who seals up the stars? No one else but God. Only God knows the age of the earth because He created it, and it's far less than 4.5 billion years. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this particular topic, and do your own research. Let me know what you find. Thank you, and God bless.